my name is Vince, and today I'm going to teach you how to paint peaches. Welcome to Ernest Vincent Wood III Fine Art. This month's episode is a little different. It's a special full-length version of the normal video, and this is the same video you get when you become a patron. In this version, you get to follow along with me for each brushstroke, and listen to my explanations for why I do what I do, and watch the palette cam so you can see the very colors I mix and lay into place. I hope you find this video valuable and that it helps you become the artist you desire to be. In the end, I want to equip you with the ability to paint what you see. It's one of the most rewarding skill sets an artist can have. So let's get started. Today we're going to paint a peach. The surface of the peach is really interesting, right? We all know the hairs create some funny edges when light touches them, and so it actually, when we normally think of painting a volume like a circle or a sphere, and as light normally decays across the surface a certain way, we understand the highlight as it goes across, and then the terminus of the light, and then the shadow. We understand how that works. You encounter these places where light just doesn't work that way around it due to its surface and its texture. So this is really fun. Peaches are beautiful. We get all these lovely reds and yellows, as well as deep purples, and then the fuzz creates a whole nother range of cool colors on top of these beautiful warm reds and oranges. They're just a lot of fun. Really, if you ever wonder why painters paint them, it's just because they're just so beautiful. And as I hold this here and you see it, I know you can tell what I'm talking about. We're going to keep it really simple today, just the peach. So I won't be setting up a true still life. That doesn't mean we can't make even one peach interesting. As I set it up, first of all, it's going to set how it's going to set. One of the tricks of the trade I'll do occasionally is I'll use little objects behind. If I like a certain vantage point, I might tuck something in there so it holds, which is fun. It's out of the way. You don't really see it. If you do see a little bit of it, you're a painter. Don't paint it. But you can kind of pay attention to everything else. So sometimes I use objects to sit in the back. Maybe a little bit of sticky tack also helps, as maybe I'll embrace. So there may be a really fun angle that you like. Don't be afraid to put other objects in just for the purpose of the painting so that you can get it to stay how you like. This area of the peach is, of course, very, very interesting, right? We know there toward the stem, everything turns in. It's going to create some form. We're going to be able to follow some of that form as it goes in. I definitely want to include that. So I want it facing me in some way. So I'm going to be looking at the light, seeing, can I create some nice lights and shadows around that? And I do want it to face me because it will help create space. We understand how peach works. We've held them, we've eaten them. And so playing up some of those parts are just a lot of fun. So even as I hold this here, I know it's not going to stay. So I'm going to have to get something, because I think I'd like it to face me a little more. Again, I wouldn't have to do that at all. I could kind of do this side a little more boring from this vantage point. You can't really see. Maybe there's a little bit of shape here to create some interest, but definitely not as interesting. Anytime you're doing a still life in objects, you can think about ways to turn it to help you create space. This is, in this case, just the one object. I'm going to turn it so that I'm going to create more space. I think I'd almost like it to go like this. I'm going to need to get something to stick behind. The reason why I particularly like what I see here is there are some really fun colors against the fuzz to really intense red right here. So I've got to get it to stay like that. So I've got to find something to kind of stick back behind. In this case, I'm going to use a little bit of my kneaded eraser here. Hopefully that does the trick. I'm just going to kind of tuck that in the back in hopes that it stays. And it did. Sometimes I get lucky. Call it beginner's luck or something. Here we go. I think this is it. I really like this vantage point. I get a really nice deep dark here. I still get to tell, I get to see this, this part of the flesh of the peach and the skin turn inward, and that reflects some light inside. That'll be fun. We're going to get that deep, dark pit where the stem would hold, and it just looks beautiful. We see a little bit of the terrain up here, and I've created, just by playing around, moving it around, and I found something that is visually interesting to me. And anytime it's visually interesting to you as the artist, you're going to be able to be excited about what you're doing. That energy flowing through comes through to the viewer after the piece is finished. They see what you saw. Something spoke to you, you pick it, and that's the fun thing, the great thing about art and the way we communicate with others is that you saw something that for some reason just spoke to you, and then you go into that secret place, you make the piece, and once you come out on the other side, you're communicating that, and that's what art's all about. So we're going to get started on this peach. I really like this. You can see me, I'll kind of close one eye, I'll unfocus my other eye, then I'm really seeing it almost painted, finished, and I really like what I see. So I hope it turns out well. Let's get cracking. You might say, why would you even need to draw this? It's a circle, it's there, what's the point? I still just want a little bit of a base. I really want to make sure that I give it some shape beside, because it's not a perfect circle. And I think I will have a tendency to make it that. And if I purposefully choose to kind of pay attention to some of the angular features of its shape here, I can maybe just play that up just slightly so that we don't feel so, it'll just feel artificial if it's a perfect circle. So I want to we're going to fill most of this surface, most of this canvas in. So I kind of see this angle. It feels like it gives about a turn, about like that, up around the top. This is what I see is the harshest angle. And I definitely want to kind of come around on that. It does feel pretty circular on this side. Then I see another, just a little bit of an angle here. And toward the bottom. That ought to give us just a little bit of visual interest. I think I like just a slight angle here too when I look at it. This allows me to see about where the shadow starts, and I might just describe that too. And I can look on this edge, where's the shadow compared to about what place on the peach. Looks like it starts about right here, back behind it. And we'll just let that give us a little bit of a guide. Next, I'm going to take a look and just ask myself, if this is the whole space, where do I see the pit? And it's looking at me. It's right. It's a little bit to this side, not directly in the middle. going to lay it in right here, I think. Maybe just slightly higher. I can make other decisions too and say, I see kind of this axis here. That's just going to give me a little bit of a cue when I start adding paint. And the background's really simple, it just fades away onto this greenish cloth. So I don't really need to do too much more there. And that's a great starting point. From there, I have a few points of reference, and we're going to start getting some color down. So I've spoken about this in other videos too, but I always like to start each piece by mixing my black. It's my point of reference. I will compare everything else to this as I'm mixing it. The reason why I mix my black is it's chromatic, meaning that it's really, even though it looks like a black, it consists of just highly saturated colors. Two of them. Ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. Okay, I like that. Nice black. Get that if I look out on the plane, I see that black happening here. Pretty much happening here near the pit as well. And that black fades out as it goes this way. So let's get a brush and start laying in some color. I like flats just for laying in color shapes. It's one of my go-to. I like the angular feel of it. And that's mostly a personal preference. Let's get a little black on here so we know where we're at for the rest of the piece. Okay. Next, here. Everything else we mix, we'll get to compare to these points of black. How dark or how light is the color I'm mixing in comparison to this black? Whenever if I get off base a little bit, then I can always come back. I like to fill in some of the outer edges before I begin working on the final peach itself, just to give it some space to work in. Plus, a lot of my darkest, if I move from darker to lighter, still a lot of my darker areas are in here in the shadow and here. I'm going to go ahead and do some quick fill in. I just like to get a big round for just filling in. The rounds are very softer edges for when you're filling in areas, or if you just want a softer edge than kind of the angular nature of the flat. The color is really interesting on this fabric. It's a really low chroma green. I'm going to use a little cerulean blue. I will use a little bit of Viridian as well. Since I'm going to make that shadow first, pull in some of my black too. Let's see. Nice, rich, dark. Because it consists of these really intense colors. That's going to be so nice. There's going to be great richness to the piece on the whole. Because when we get in there and we add all the chroma that the peach is going to hold, this will just really work together, because every part of the piece consists of just a few tube colors. Okay, I like that dark, but probably the rest of the light around here is going to be something about like this, which means I want to fill this in with about the same value, and I really like this color. It's fairly accurate. Sometimes those are things you didn't intend, but they ended up working out anyway. Get a little yellow ochre in here. Don't want it to get too warm though. I can bring it back cooler. And then the only way to see, for me, maybe not for you here, is to just lay it down. See if it's working. See if we're next to these darks. So it's about the same. I feel like it's a little warmer than it ought to be. We'll bring in more cerulean. I'm always a little hesitant to go with white. My reasoning is that all of us have a tendency to say, oh, it needs to be darker, I'll add black. Oh, it needs to be lighter, I'll add white. And white quickly makes things chalky. And so I usually am very slow to use it. But obviously you need it to create lighter values, but you don't have to rush to it. You can ask yourself, is there any other way for me to make this lighter using color, using a careful approach before I jump to solely using white.
What colors are you mixing right now? What is that to achieve?
So I'm making a little bit bigger pool of color here so I can fill in this area. So I'm trying to come close to matching what I mixed here, because I want to carry this around the rest of the peach. So I was at least this kind of greenish, low chroma green. Mix a little bit of raw umber. You can get some of your Viridian in there. It's going to be really strong though, and turn things very cool very quick. It's a very strong color. And, you know, to look at the palette here, you'd say, well, yeah, I've got a lot of very strong color. And that's fine. It's just, I generally never use them directly out of the tube. Let them all mix together to neutralize one another. Because, you know, everything we're mixing here will also appear in our work later. There's a great deal of unity. It's all about unity when using a limited palette. You can see I'm just continue to work my way around. Following my drawing. Creating an environment for what's going to be in front of this area. Also seeing that, you know, I want that shadow to be a little darker. And the same color temperature, it's a little warmer. Sometimes when I know I'm going to mix directly onto, I will grab a direct tube color because I know I'm going to work it into an area that needs a little bit of neutralizing. Okay, we're going to quickly fill in the rest here. Do you have to? No, not necessarily, but I just want to go end to end this time. And I do see a slight light decay in the back. I can make that just a little darker. You can pay attention to those subtleties and achieve nice effects. Really make it feel like the light is falling on your subject. There's no rule as to whether, you know, I could have done the peach first and worked my way out. That's fine. A lot of artists work that way, from areas that they know are the most important to the areas of least importance, because they know the importance of trying to get those areas to a place that they are holding the painting up. I just train it up sometimes. Sometimes I work from kind of least important to most important. Sometimes if I'm doing figurative work, I will just jump directly into just the portrait. Sometimes I'll work my way toward the figure. And that's partially so that I just have an environment with which to compare everything that's going to happen in the center for what's happening outside. I'm going to add a little more raw umber in here. It's just looking a little too green. Neutralize it just a little. But let the warmth in the raw umber neutralize that just slightly. In this case, we're working our way to the exciting part. We get to have fun the rest of the way, working on this beautiful peach, all the subtleties of color that reside in it. So nice. Making a little lighter here on the cloth where I know the light is stronger before it decays back into the background. Okay, I think we have a great place for the peach to live in, to reside in. And so that's going to be our next step, is doing a very similar thing, only now we're going to do it on the peach. I can key in a few little extra shadow things I see here just really quick. Yeah, that's nice. All right. So in a very similar way, I'm going to start from darkest to lightest. When I look at the peach, I see some pretty intense deep reds, dark reds here, and we're gonna begin there. Grab a new brush. Like my flats. So I've got my black mixed. Getting some alizarin crimson here. Mix it up a little, see. Alizarin crimson is a cooler red. And for this, it's really great for what we're working on now. Like that, that's pretty intense, but yet dark. Maybe just a little more ultramarine. Don't want to lose the redness because I just see so lovely here. So much like I have in previous tutorials where I've talked about building things via shapes. You know, we have some complicated things going on here with the surface of the peach and the texture of the furry and fuzzy surface. I'm going to just look for a couple dark shapes that I see. And I'm using this point that I already established to kind of start keying those areas. I'll immediately notice the shape falls about right here. It's not quite as dark as I would like. And at the same time, I don't want to lose my red, this deep, strong red. So notice this dark shape that I'm looking at goes just around. It doesn't touch. It's close. Goes from about right there. And that's just one shape that I see on the piece. Do I see this exact color happening elsewhere? I can ask myself. I can say, yeah, maybe right here. Next, where else do I see something like it or something similar? Because we can just take another step from what we've already mixed here. It looks a little bluer and a little lighter in some other areas very near it. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of blue. And in this case, I do know white is going to achieve the effect I want to achieve. See this color happening also back here. It does bump up against our background. Okay, we're going to keep moving. I maybe see some of this. It's just a little lighter and yellower. Here's where your limited palette pays off. I need to go lighter and I need to go more yellow. So I'll get a little bit of yellow ochre, which is both. It's both lighter and yellower. I don't want it to turn too muddy on me because I still see quite a bit of chroma. I'm looking at kind of this underside here. Still looks fairly red. So I can add burnt sienna to keep that intense. I can always reach back in to my alizarin crimson. I'm going to lay this in because I need to see how I'm doing. I think I'm good with that. And that extends, this color extends just about to the very bottom here. So remember, I'm just piecing it together. This is a slow process. Immediately you don't see see the benefits, but we're going to get there. So since I have this color mixed, I'll kind of jump around a little bit. I'll see if I see it anywhere else. I think if I add just a little more to it, this is what's happening right inside here next to the top of the pit. Also, maybe next to the access line I mentioned earlier. Possibly in some areas on the dark side of the peach too. There's frankly a lot going on there. Just different colors, some of the interesting colors that just occur in the peach naturally. Again, working dark to light. I mean, I may miss some as I go, but I feel pretty good about that. I see a little bit more of a redder area here that I want to lay in. That looks pretty red in comparison. Maybe even here too. some really fun, interesting things happening. Just do a lot of looking. How far does this go? Probably not much farther than that. All right, I'm going to take the next step and look at what's just a little lighter. This time I'm going to get a little more chroma by getting my CAD yellow. And even this area is fairly dark in here, but I can still see some of the yellow. Let's turn red again right here. This brush will end up probably being my darker, this brush will end up being my darker red, probably just any darks that fall on the peach. I will be using this for those. Okay. I'm feeling some excitement. I know we're going to get to some good parts here in a second, and so I'm just, sometimes you just have to be patient. Know that you're building up really important areas that you're going to get to, that are going to get to shine later as we do the rest of the work. Okay. Some of this yellow, this mottled side of the peach, still pretty dark, but it's not the same kind of reddish. Gonna work on getting some of that in. Again, this is largely an intuitive process. You move from area to area and kind of look to the next spot that really speaks to you, and you say, all right, yep, I'm going to put that in there. And this is what's so enjoyable about painting, is you're finding these little things, little spots of beauty that you're going to get, knowing that we're making our way toward the areas that are in the light, and then even towards some of these beautiful purples and pale, kind of fuzzy areas toward the end. We're getting there. All right, I think put a little more in here. We'll see where we go next. I like, getting some of these in here, because now this area is significantly darker than my ground layer that I had down, and I can see that my black shadow is not nearly as dark as it ought to be. And at that point, I can grab more of my black. I can really make that a lot darker, stronger. That's the reason why we work on a ground layer rather than just on white, because even the ground layer, as light as it was, which is probably about a 30% value, it made this black look black when it wasn't quite as dark as it ought to be. And those are things you don't know until you fill areas in. It's really important to cover piece. So that's, I feel much better about that. I'm just lightly, since this is a one-layer painting, I've got to go very light. If I push too hard, I'll push away the black, and we'll see that the ground layer again coming through. Shadow comes a little bit out, farther out than I have it here. I want to do that just slightly. Thing about having this brush loaded is I can just pull it back in and adjust some of these areas. So yeah, at the end of a long painting day, I've got lots of brushes to clean. That's part of it. I clean up my edge here so I don't have any ground layer showing. That'll help tell me what I need to do next when I get to that point. Okay, let's keep doing more color. I think I'm going to get another brush out. And when I first get a brush out, oftentimes there's some of the bristles maybe they've dried and are splayed out a little bit. That's why I'll initially just dip into the medium to just pull everything together, and that would happen naturally as you paint on it. And I need to activate the brush, get some thinner so I can move some paint around. So we're going to begin pursuing just a little more color in some of these areas. Really want to get into some of these reds. Cad red medium, very strong. There's no place in the piece where I would just apply this directly. I will mix it with other things, even though, you know, it is clearly, there are some really intense reds here, but not that intense. But they deserve that much chroma. Two, if you lay stuff in like that, it's just going to hop right off the page. And you'll be very sad because your painting doesn't work. So my eyes roving, I'm searching, I'm looking for places where I see that intensity, intense red. Okay, I think I've got those in. They're pretty intense right now. And I'm gonna move away from those areas. You notice I've been hesitant to begin using a lot of white because it will cool things off as well as take away some of the intensity of color. But now I'm going to be using it. As I look at this area of the peach here around the side, you know, it's interesting because it looks very, it's not that, you would expect, okay, we're going to get these areas that are very full of color, but because of the surface, it's actually not going to work that way. But we're going to trust in what we know to be true, which is just to continue working with the shapes that we see. And everything is going to work in the end. And if it doesn't work in the end, we battle it until it does. Keep finding out what did we do wrong? What happened? So a lot of times I want to fill things in so that I can make good informed decisions. And there's artists out there, they can do that immediately, effortlessly. It's not me. I have to kind of get some color in there, see in which ways I need to shift it, and then make those decisions. So I just want to move into my background layer just a little bit and eliminate all these edges that will be problematic later, space stealers. Achieving these purples with a little bit of ultramarine, just a tad bit of alizarin, and the cad red. Getting caught up wanting to really see this dark and see it transition. We're not going to see a true highlight like you would expect. It just doesn't exist. It's diffused enough by the surface, by the fuzziness. Kind of just like before on the background, wanting to block it in. That's what I'm really moving toward right now. I want to get everything moved in because it's really hard for me to tell what I'm doing until I do. White and ultramarine. It's a little. See, I could transition this area a little better. So I want to make sure that I'm getting some of the color I see in it coming through here. At this point, I'm going to fill in probably as quick as possible. This is generally the most uncomfortable point for me, where there's a little too much going on, too much not just nailed down yet to make some informed decisions. And I want to get there. And I can see some of the mistakes I've already made. And I know the only way out is to begin dealing with those. And I'm not going to get there until the rest is finished. So this is definitely the point at which I rush it. This yellow is very cool here and fairly dark. We're getting there. just about have it all filled in. And we're essentially there. At this point, make a couple more passes just to see, and what did I miss? And some of these areas that are still showing through. I'll often take a buffer brush at this point and just clean up those areas with some of the color that I've already put down. I just want to get everything covered. So none of the ground layer showing through is, so none of the ground layer showing through is stealing space. Talk about making space often, and it's largely because that's what we're doing. We have a two-dimensional surface that somehow we're trying to create three-dimensional space on. And we're just trying to pay attention to enough of the cues, spatial cues, that will tell the viewer what's happening. So you notice what I'm not trying to do is paint little hairs, and not even trying to even think about it in that terms, or even think about softening in such a way. Even though, yeah, I'm using a buffing brush, I'm just really trying to fill in the holes right now that I have, so that I can come back in, reassess areas that need value shifts, and then primarily value, and then we'll look at temperature, because there's some really interesting and fun things that are happening temperature-wise in this piece, especially on the peach. So we have a great starting point. It's laid in, and now this allows me to truly begin to question everything and say, okay, what needs the most attention? And these are moments where I get up, I step back, I take a look at it, I look from it, I look to my subject matter, I look from it, look to my subject matter, and I say, yep, wow, this is a really dark value along here that extends a lot farther, and that darkness goes down into here too. I've made this too light. So we'll start there. And then we'll make other value judgments as we go. So I don't want to lose the chroma in this dark. I don't want to use so much black that I lose it. And so it's a little bit of a push and pull. At what point does adding my mixed black to alizarin crimson take away that rich color? And I want to be careful. At the same time, I need it to be darker than it is. And so, gotta do it. Another thing I can try is using a little bit of just our blue. We can make it really deep purple. It might be relatively dark. You can see what that does. Yeah, that's too cool. I just end up lacking the same warmth that I want. So I'm going to use a little more of the black, but I'm trying to keep it warm. This is the push and pull. To really try to achieve beautiful painting, beautiful color. And this is where it matters that you know your palette. You know what your palette can do. There's certain things that these particular colors can and can't do. I'm going to have to think about, this is my darkest dark in the peach, this really intense dark red that I've made here. Then everything else kind of has to shift around it. Already that was a really good move, and we've experienced some great changes. And that was just bringing back this area, darkening it to a point that from what I see when I look at the subject. The same in here. It's pretty dark here, but that's fairly accurate, so I'm not going to touch that one. And I think this again happens in here. I'm very lightly, so I already have paint down here that's wet and is moving. I'm very lightly, harsh angle, kind of laying down this color that this really dark red that I've mixed. So as to not stir up what's underneath too much. And in some ways just barely grazing the canvas. These are also moments where I see some of my initial drawing of the shape. It's maybe a little funny here and there. That will make a difference on this. So I can begin to judge, decide. I can begin to judge and decide what I want to happen here. I think this carries on just a little farther this way. We don't quite have that fuzzy edge just yet. It's fairly dark. This is really a fun part too. We've had it blocked in, and now every refinement that we make is rewarding because it starts to work more and more. Those 3 strokes there changed it, and I was just seeing how this edge just needed to be lost a little more. Might just do dust a tad more. So as I keep roving around, I say, the light, when it falls right here, it's very yellow. And I want to create that dynamic range where we go from dark to some of the lightest areas. That creates visual interest in the piece. That's why we all love looking at classical paintings, because they take us from these really light areas to dark areas. It feels very dramatic, theatrical. So I'm going to go overboard here to see what happens in this area. since I know I'm going to mix in to what I have there already, I can push a really lemony yellow here and mix it into it, knowing that it's going to tone it down some with what I have. And yeah, that ended up working out pretty well. The edge around it is a little more red. I want to capture some of those spots because we all know, whether we realize it or not, that's the sort of thing that happens on a peach. See just these little subtleties that are so nice. It's about this point that I start getting excited again. You know, I've gone from an initial excitement to starting the piece, really pumped, to blocking it in and feeling like, oh, you know, this isn't really working, or to then to saying, okay, we're at a point now where we're going to begin working on areas, to back to addressing the problems and then seeing it begin to work. And then it gets exciting again, and I'm really pumped up to finish. Very lightly brushing the canvas. Depending on when you're watching this, you might ask, when and how did he get peaches in January in North America? Chilean peaches, my friends. Okay, I like those changes. We're going to move into this area a little more now, and just pay closer attention. You know, I blocked it in. I needed to block it in so that I could make informed decisions now. But now it's time to make those, and to look carefully and see what's happening, see where I'm getting it wrong. So I'm initially looking for value. I see immediately this area being lighter than it is here. It's kind of more of a bluish purple. We're going to make sure I address that. Some of this area of this intense red streaks into there, and that'll look nice. I see. That was one of the areas I was really excited about when I got started, or when I was arranging it. This place. I want to touch that area a little more. I think largely I need to start by just darkening some of these areas and getting them a little blue. So darkening and shifting it blue. So whatever color I mix here, I know that I'm going to be moving things with an ultramarine blue into some of these areas, because I needed to go darker, I needed to go bluer. The limited palette allows me to take it in that direction. Sometimes I just need to lay a little bit of color in to see if I'm doing the right thing. I think I am. Hard to say. Still unsure. me, this is a lot of the joy of painting is problem solving and figuring this out. And I will just work on these areas over and over until they work. And then when they do work, it's so rewarding, especially after setbacks. Even if they were my own setbacks, because I was in a rush to just fill things in and it wasn't quite right. It's not as light as I initially did it. I want to knock it down some. Value being first. Now, it's a little too purple or violet for you people that hate people that say purple. I'm going to wrestle with that a little bit. Listen to my intuition. It says to put a little bit of viridian in there. The thing that you can do is think about your color wheel. If we need to reduce the amount of one side, we add mixtures from the other. Of course, in this case, it'd be yellows. Raw umber is a dark greenish yellow. I'm going to begin placing that here and there. In small, subtle ways. Turn that down a bit. This is kind of another time where I'm going to trust instincts, keep moving through the piece. When I see little color shifts, I will adjust, I'll make those. Value being first importance. And just like that. This area is working now. I'm better off with, feel a little bit better about what's happening here. Sometimes your brush overdoes it. And now I'm going to pay attention to the edge here, which is very, very contrary, and that's the fun part that will actually make us feel like we're looking at a peach in light, are the places where we just see that fuzziness. This is a really delicate space. We don't want to overdo it. But when I look at it value-wise, I see it get lighter as it comes to this edge. See some more of the edge. It's here a little bit. Kind of another fun spot here where I really see it show up. See it decay over the top there. I don't see it so much here, mostly here and here, which makes sense because the light's traveling. Seeing it on these sides, not so much back around the back where of course at this edge I'm kind of seeing the light fall down on top of it, where here really picking up that light. Sometimes just thinking about your light direction can be very helpful. I don't want to overdo it here. Kind of letting the subject matter tell me where to put it. It's uneven, it's imperfect. I talked about that highlight being not too present, but I do see a little bit of diffused lighter areas here that I want to put in. As we continue to go on this, every one of these adjustments, I feel better and better about. And it does just continue to ask, okay, how far do I want to take it? When am I going to stop? When am I satisfied? And for each of us, that looks very different. think I could stop here, but I'm going to just go a little farther. And look for just a few more cues that I think will make the painting more successful. This is another good time to back up, take a look at the subject matter, take a look at the painting, subject matter, painting, subject matter, painting, until you find got a lot of colors out now that we can pull from. We've already mixed. I think there's just a little bit of a darker area here. I think if I describe that, we'll feel that terrain of the peach just slightly. We'll feel that dip down a little more. This isn't quite feeling as deep as I'd like it to feel. So make a few adjustments. Could also be because I don't quite have enough light here showing as I look at it. These are little areas of problem solving each one of us has to figure out as we work. I'd like to add just a little bit of color there. That's more for my enjoyment. I mean, yes, I see it in the piece, but if we intensify some of the color on this side, if that'll feel a little deeper. See if we intensify the color on this side just slightly. See if it feels a little deeper. I think it does. Again, just looking carefully back and forth. Passages are just so lovely in the object. You want to capture them. You want to really see it work. Sometimes you just got to find that balance. Find that satisfaction kind of where it is. I think this is probably about all I'm going to be able to do. You know, yes, I could sit here for the next 10 years and capture every one of those peach wouldn't last, but and we're just chasing that one moment. This beautiful temporary object. Our moment here with it. And enjoying it. It's easy to overdo it in color, especially on something like this where you see so much of it. And so the true challenge is to keep forcing yourself to look objectively, saying, okay, yeah, I want these look like some beautiful purples, but really they're a lot lower in chroma than I have them. They're, there's a lot of raw umber back in there. And it's fun as you get out to the edge here, there's all these little bits of uneven areas where it's, either slightly lumpy or the fuzz is maybe a little longer or brushed away. And you can play with those to create a little more volume. Notice I'm kind of making my stroke rounded as well. You utilize the way the paint is laid down to describe what you're painting. Very nearly there. See an area I'd like to make just a bit darker. I want to really try to find those Okay, we're definitely in the home stretch now. This is probably the one spot that I see kind of feels like it disappears into the dark there. It might be just a little darker down here too. I don't want to do that too much, but just send that back a little bit. I don't want it to stick out too much. I want it to sit in space, even if it's just inside this greenish hole. So make a couple more little drawing issues, drawing adjustments, excuse me. Carry this up just a little bit more. And so I want that to feel deep in there. I think I might go back into my black a little bit. See if I can get this a little darker without losing all my color. And then last, I may just take the buffer brush and work it over a few areas, soften them. If I see some really harsh lines, soften a few areas, knock them down. Still trying to follow the contour lines. This volume. Last thing I want to try to achieve is this yellow. I want it to be a lot cooler down here as it goes into the shadow. It's kind of greenish. I'm going to pull in some of the color I used in the background. See if I can create just a little bit there. In some ways that was just for me, like the little green there. Some of this melds into it a little bit. This edge might need just a little bit of tending to. We've already worked on it, just a little messy.
Thank you so much for watching. If you found anything helpful from this tutorial, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and let me know what you want me to paint next in the comments. Your ideas are better than mine anyhow, and I'd really like to know what you're interested in, because you're a human soul and you're infinitely valuable. As I said at the beginning of the video, I'm on Patreon. When you're an $8 a month patron, you can access full tutorials and digital assets where you can learn how to paint like me. This video is just a taste of the kind of instruction you can expect every month. If you're not already a patron, click the link below, and in a few easy steps, you can become the artist you desire to be. And remember, never stop painting.
Okay, so I think this is it. I think this is a good stopping point, and I'm happy to stop here. Remember, we kind of set off by laying down our darks, finding those darkest points, working the background in, coming into the peach, and still finding certain color areas. So starting here and this nice, deep, rich, dark red, allowing that to be our darkest point, and then using that as the kind of marker for setting the values for the rest of the peach, following the little shapes we see, chasing after those little things here and there, until finally arriving at when we step back, all of a sudden we do have something that's set in space, that we do feel that texture on. We saw that seems like on the whole the fuzziness was on the top and bottom here. Considering the lights coming this way, we were seeing it really touch those areas if we wanted to make a rule out of anything. I don't like rules. I like to look at what I'm looking at and work from that. But we definitely saw maybe some fuzz happening on the outside of here. But we paid attention to some of the subtle colors here until we step back, and all of a sudden everything is sitting in space.